but also on the podcast feed. All right, here we go. Let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to a live edition of the Managing Madrid podcast. This is Kiyan Sobhani. I am currently live on YouTube with a bunch of my YouTube subscribers who are firing away questions and comments in the chat. It is currently almost 1:15 p.m. Eastern / 7:15 p.m. Central European time. And I realized this morning that I've been kind of MIA. Haven't been posting much. My last tweet was like about Game 6 of the Celtics Miami Heat game, which was incredible. And I haven't said anything since. Now, I haven't been taking vacation or taking any time off. I've just been actually doing a lot of due diligence, constantly texting agents, players' agents, making sure that I have all the up-to-date information. Haven't been reporting anything, but I just wanted to make sure for my sanity and also the quality of my work and my articles, I have accurate information. So just a lot of texting agents and just finding out information, making sure the reports are true or not. And so I will try to relay as much correct information I can to you guys through the questions and answers. And some of the stuff I cannot speak about, some of the stuff I can. And we'll go from there. Okay. I have another podcast starting at 3. So that gives us about 46 minutes now to go through questions and answers. The questions are not going to come in through live voice, audio, or video because it's YouTube. It's only through comments. So I will just chronologically go through the comments without any really hesitation or bias or any prejudice or what the question is. I'm just going to go through and basically read as much as I can and comment or answer the questions. Okay. Akash says, Kiyan, what are your thoughts about Benzema leaving? Whoa, right to the point, huh? Just a minute into the podcast, and that's where we are already. Well, my thoughts on Benzema are leaving. I have a lot. I guess we can start from here. If Benzema does decide to leave, which I wouldn't say based on from what I know, it's not a guarantee he'll leave or stay. There's a real chance that he'll actually end up staying. And it's not as, like, I think a lot of people have always already written the news and have kind of assumed that he's not going to be here next year. I don't think we're at that stage yet. I do think there's a real consideration that he's taking because, quite frankly, I don't think anyone in this chat, anyone listening to this podcast would turn down that kind of absolutely ridiculous money that is being offered to him from Saudi Arabia. So that being said, I mean, he is at a real stage in his career where he's achieved every single thing you could possibly imagine to achieve in club football. Ballon d'Ors, more Champions League titles than basically Barcelona's entire history. Top scorers, Pichichis, played alongside some of the greatest players of all time. An incredible legacy at Real Madrid now. I mean, there's nothing else he needs to be doing, really, to be quite frankly, arguably the third greatest player in club history. He's at a stage now in his career where he can focus on cash. And he can do that. And he has every right to do that. And I don't think any one of us would judge him for that or get mad at him for that. I think if he decided to stay, certainly I think he has earned the right to make that call, whether it's to stay or leave. I mean, he has the contract. He has another year left. He can stay if he wants. I will say, if he does decide to stay, what I think is reasonable to want from both the club and him to come up with an understanding that he can't be the de facto game in, game out starter every single game for next season. Will he be an incredible player in spurts? I think he definitely still has that in the tank. We saw it this year. He had an entire month where I think he had 3 hat tricks in a month, and those were against big teams and big games as well. So, but I do think it's reasonable to want Benzema to take a backseat in terms of playing time, not playing every second. But I also do think that the answer to this question needs to be answered soon, because this is from a squad building perspective. The club has to know, are we putting our eggs in the basket of Harry Kane and really trying to get an alpha number 9 striker, elite striker to start every game? Or if Benzema's staying, are you going for a lower profile that can basically spot rest him throughout the season? So it's an important answer to have quickly. And so those are my just kind of really quick thoughts on it. I haven't mentally prepared myself for Benzema actually leaving yet because I don't think we're quite there yet. If it does come into fruition, I think it's a discussion we'll unpack and unravel a little bit more. All right, got to go through these a little bit quicker. Somnath says, I hope Inter win. I'll sign up for that. Guarov says, you are the best, Kiyan, with a lightning bolt. My man, I appreciate you tuning in. Adham Salam says, hey man, I wanted to ask you if you'd rather have Harry Kane and not chase Haaland or Mbappe, or setting up for Firmino and not getting Kane, but potentially maybe losing both Haaland and Mbappe. Well, okay, this is an interesting question. My answer to this is that I think whether it's Kane or Firmino, you really don't want to give a long-term contract to either of those two, which would mean that pursuing Haaland and Mbappe in 2024 shouldn't be a huge barrier based on if you get Kane or Firmino. The reason for that is that, and I don't know if this will happen because Kane is not old enough to necessarily give him an ultimatum to say you have to sign a short-term contract. I think he's still under 30, right? Even though he's pretty much 30. I wouldn't give Kane a long-term contract, whether Benzema stays or not. The reason for that is I'm really scarred from Hazard. And I think it's completely reasonable to not want to give a long-term contract to a player who is 30 and has an injury history. Now, quite frankly, if Harry Kane stays healthy for 3-4 years, I think, I would actually commit to a long-term contract, but you have zero ability to predict that. We have no idea if that would actually happen. So it's a huge risk. So if we had the guarantee, if God could tell us right now, hey, just so you know, Kane is not going to get injured for 4 years, you're pretty safe giving him the long-term contract, then of course we'd sign up for that. But because we don't know if that would actually happen, it's really a big risk to have to handcuff yourself to a long-term contract for Harry Kane. So I would only give him a 2-year deal. Beyond that, I wouldn't risk it. The problem is, would he accept that? I think he may not. And he has every right not to. But at the same time, how much leverage does Harry Kane have in a situation like this where Tottenham don't want to sell within England based on reports? If that's true, that means he has a few options outside of England. It's basically Real Madrid and then kind of the other two big clubs we're looking at are PSG and Bayern. So I just wouldn't give Harry Kane a long-term contract. If it came down to Kane long-term or Firmino 1 year, I would take Firmino 1 year. No questions asked. So that's, I'll leave it there. We'll probably come back to that. Some Benzema Kane questions. Okay, I already answered that. Okay, a lot of these are Benzema Kane. Arsonist says, hello, Kiyan, congrats for 7K subscribers on YouTube. Yes, thank you, man. It's peanuts. It's absolutely nothing. Some YouTubers have 7,000 views per second, let alone 7K subscribers. They have millions and millions. Hey, but we start somewhere. We got to celebrate our little victories, right? Thank you. First, hopefully the first 7K, and we can double that. We can double that. Let's aim to double that by the end of the calendar year. Prince says, why is Tobias leaving? I mean, I haven't heard anything concrete of Tobias leaving, although maybe I missed something in the last few hours. But if he does leave, it's because he's not good enough, quite frankly. He's a little bit too raw. He has actually been demoted by Raul now. So, I don't think he's worth Real Madrid having to pay him, by the way, because they don't own him full time after this. So they have to pay him to sign him. They can't just keep him without paying. So it's a reasonable I've used the word reasonable a lot this live call. I don't know why, but it is reasonable. Maybe I heard that somewhere before I started recording. Sebastian Hultuana says Ronaldo last dance. Why and why not? I'm gonna say hard pass with respect to, in my opinion, if probably the greatest player ever, at least top two, definitely the greatest player in club history. Ship has sailed. It's time to move on. All right, the comments are just jumping now. So if I missed your comment, I apologize. Anthony says, "What's up, Kiyan? We all knew these days were coming, but man, I'm not ready. The last 2 summers already have been heartbreaking enough for us." Madridistas. Yeah, well, that's life, man. We will lose legends every year almost for the rest of our lives, and we have lost already so many legends, and this has been happening since 1902. As part of being a fan, it's heartbreaking, but you move on, and new fan favorites will appear, new legends will appear. Arash Raghabi says Militao needs to be replaced. Real needs to buy a center back. Wow. Hard disagree. Militao is one of the greatest center backs in the world. Don't let little dips in form here and there tell you otherwise. All right. Let's see. Somnath1235 says, "Hey, Kiyan, does Carlo have anything new to offer to this team? He improved Vinicius, Fede, Rodrigo, but I feel he has done his part. We need to move on to someone new. What's your take on this?" Let me take a sip of coffee first. I think Carlo's cycle will come to an end at the latest at the end of his contract. I think you can argue it should come sooner. It should come this summer. But at the same time, you have to give benefit of the doubt to Carlo for one thing. It's that depending on the strength of his squad, he can be tactically versatile. I mean, he is tactically versatile. There is truth to that. We saw Carlo Ancelotti in 2015 play a completely different brand of football than what he is playing now. When he had the younger midfielders and the ability to control games like the quartet of James, Isco, Modric, and Kroos, really all in their peak, or close to their peak at least, definitely younger versions. It was a completely different brand of football. It wasn't, some of the more conservative counter-attacking, get the ball to Vinicius, let him beat 2 or 3 players. It was high pressing, high octane, possession, counter pressing. So the argument to be made for keeping Carlo is that maybe you give him a different set of players, and he'll play differently next year. Now, obviously, the problem is you have to give him a different set of players, or at least upgrade positions, because the board has not been that active in upgrading the squad of late. We have no news of a new right back. We have Fran Garcia coming back, and murmurings of another left back. Might get into it later on in the call, speaking about my Canadian sources. And then there is a real possibility of more attackers coming in. I guess the issue with Carlo is that if he wants to play a different brand of football, is he willing to play Modric and Kroos less next year? I personally think Kroos is still at an incredibly high level. So I don't think you necessarily have to demote both of them. I also think Modric can be at a high level, but it's just the reality with Modric is that it's going to be fewer and far between. And he's not going to give us the game-changing masterclass performances every single week now. So if you're going to keep him, you have to play him less so that he has enough in the tank for those games. And also you have to wonder how much his presence in the locker room, even if he has a demotion in playing time, still gets in the way. And I've had an entire segment about this that is quite controversial. So I'm sure you've already heard me speak about it. But if you give him the Bellingham along with the Camavinga in midfield instead of left back, Tchouameni, Fede, all that stuff, maybe Ceballos does get renewed because there has been a contract offer there. Maybe he does play differently next year. So you have to give Carlo the benefit of the doubt. I am a little bit biased, but I think rightfully biased. But I would love to see what Xabi Alonso can do with a young Real Madrid team, maybe in 2 years. Jake says, you mentioned before contact with the agent of Vinicius. Are you confident he has no interest in leaving? I'm pretty confident. Although I will say agents, just because an agent says something doesn't always mean it's true. Agents will tell you what they want you to say. But Vinicius is, I don't think he will leave. Ayman says, will Real Madrid tank another year for the promised 2024 Holland Mbappe Saga Part 2? I'm not sure what you mean by tank. This is not an NBA scenario where you try to get last place and get a draft pick. You have to still try to win every single year. So I don't think they will quote unquote tank. But it is true that maybe they are looking at that summer as a potential big summer. Chris says, people freaking out about Jude Bellingham needing surgery. Are you worried? Not necessarily. I think that the weird thing about the surgery news is that it's actually not really new news. I mean, there were talks about, he has had pain in his knee for some time. And in the past month or so, he's actually played through some pain. And I think the plan was originally to get surgery in the summertime. So I don't think this is not something that the club didn't know about. All right, let's see where we are. Chris says Fresneda or Cancelo. I'm not that high on Fresneda. He does not contribute much offensively. And with Cancelo, I worry about the ego part of it. It's pretty telling that both Bayern and City had no interest in him. Isa says, why not renew Benzema and Modric and sell them directly to Saudi, who must pay if they renewed their contract, but Kane for 2-year contract plus going for Mbappe, well, first of all, you don't need to renew Benzema. You could sell him. Now, I think what might happen with Benzema is that I don't think you may not get a transfer fee necessarily, although I'm not sure if that happens. What may happen is Benzema himself might walk away from his contract and leave money on the table that Real Madrid would not have to pay him for. But in turn, obviously, he would just be filthy rich anyway, so he wouldn't care walking away from the contract. Let's see. Guarav says, what about Jose Lu? I mentioned it already, but really good striker, veteran presence, would be a short-term deal, low risk. If he's replacing Mariano and not Benzema, I think it's a good signing. But I also would say that if Alvaro's in the squad next season, I would prefer it to be Alvaro who's taking those minutes. But if Alvaro's going on loan, then obviously it's a good signing. All right. I just realized that I'm actually really behind on questions. Like the questions are moved on. Like these questions are from like 30 minutes ago. Because I know a lot of questions came in before I started recording too. Hi, Kiyan. I think you talked about this before, but how much money is enough? Obviously, guys like us would accept 100 million net a year, but someone like Benzema who has earned so much, why does he need more? Well, Benzema hasn't had the one like crazy Middle Eastern contract, right? So he hasn't done that yet. But I will say, like someone like Mbappe or Ronaldo, at this point, I think you could say, like, okay, what are you going to do with that money? What are you going to just pass it on to your generational, like just 5 generations from now? You're just going to keep passing it down. What are you going to do with that? You can't spend it in your lifetime. So I think reasonably Benzema is probably could talk himself into at least one more huge mega contract before he retires. Players have to think about it, man. Like, God forbid if Benzema says, okay, I'll take that contract 2 years from now, not next year, and then God forbid he gets a terrible career-ending injury next year, then he wouldn't get that, right? Obviously, that you don't want that to happen, but I'm sure this stuff goes through their minds. Ashutosh says, how close are managing Madrid to players' agents? Is it direct or through multiple intermediaries? It's not. I would speak for myself and probably Lucas. Between both of us, we pretty much have everyone's number in our phone directly. We usually don't go the route of breaking news. Lucas does that a bit more than me. I just make sure my reporting is accurate. Okay. Ishan says, is it better to shift Rodrigo to the center and Valverde to the right for the next season in case Benzema leaves, provided that either Haaland or Mbappe join us in 2024? I still think you need a striker, especially if Benzema leaves. That is not Rodrigo. I don't think that is sustainable or something you can rely on every game. I also think Fede is better in midfield. Farouk says, should we go for Mbappe even if it means with Vinicius's future with us, means problems with Vinicius' future with us? We have had a segment entirely on this, on the tactical fit about Mbappe and Vinicius. But just to summarize it, I think what it would essentially look like is that they would be interchangeable centrally and left wing, similar to the dynamic of Benzema and Mbappe at the French national team briefly when he just came back and they were playing together in the Nations League, or Benzema and Cristiano Ronaldo kind of deal, where they swap positions quite often, they link up together, and Real Madrid's offense will likely be going through the left basically for the next decade. Someone says Harry Kane is wank, man. He is not Real Madrid material. Bro, there's only one person who's wank here, and it's not Harry Kane, and it's not me. Jude Bellingham, knee injury. We talked about it. Benzema has missed more games than Kane in the last few years. Yeah, the thing with Kane is just it's kind of unknown. Like, with Benzema, his body just started to his age started to catch up with his body in the last year or so. And with Harry Kane, he does have a degree of professionalism, obviously. And I think that's one big difference between him and Hazard. A lot of people were saying we don't want it to be another Hazard situation. I said that too. In this podcast, I said it. But there is a degree of professionalism that Harry Kane has that Hazard didn't have, for example, which is he takes care of himself in the off seasons. He's professional. So that part of it is also fair. Got a few people. Okay, guys, please do not spam the chat with the same question, please. All right. I'm going to move forward a little bit, skip past a bunch of stuff. What do you think? Andy Ramirez says, what do you think we need to change tactically next year to be able to compete better with teams like Manchester City? If you look at the last few Champions League exits that we had, they've had a similar theme. Whether it's Manchester City this year, whether it was Chelsea a couple years ago, whether it was Manchester City before that and Ajax before that. I'm sure I'm getting some of the years mixed up, but you'll get my point. We have not been able to deal with teams that have a high press. We need to work on our press resistancy, our positioning on defense, our structure, and also our fluidity in attack. We haven't had real fluidity, and that a lot of that will have to do with the talent we've lost over the years in attack. It's gotten better with Vinicius, but especially this year, Vinicius was really alone in the attack for so many so many games until Rodrigo was introduced into the starting lineup. But some of that was canceled out with Benzema's decline as well. So I would say tactically, you need to be more press resistant, and you need to connect the midfield and attack better, and come up with ways to have unpredictability in your offense. And that probably requires more help for Vinicius. And I think Rodrigo definitely mitigates some of that. But I do think you need probably someone else apart from Rodrigo as well to bring in, especially with Benzema either declining or possibly leaving. Let's see. Ramtin is asking about João Cancelo. I did answer that a little bit earlier in the podcast, but you guys, this podcast will be uploaded entirely if you're just joining late. Decode says, do you think Carvajal has too much influence in the dressing room or too many connections? It makes no sense why we're not desperate for a right back. He is a burden to us. Yeah, I agree. The right back is one that I'm surprised we haven't heard more about in terms of players to be linked with. So I have the same concerns that you do. Is there a reason? Is it because of influence? I mean, I think part of it is that Real Madrid has two right backs in the squad under contract in their view. I know a lot of us don't really feel Lucas Vazquez as a right back that can be relied upon, but in the club's eyes, and again, this is not my opinion or anything, it's just the club looks at, okay, we have Vazquez, we have Carvajal. Those are two players not only who were playing as right back, but also two players who are highly respected, club legends in their own way. Vazquez, in partly because he's humble, he never complains, he's in the squad regardless of what the role you give him is. So these are two players who there's an emotional attachment to as well. So these are reasons why the club, I think, are hesitant to look at the right back position, where in my opinion, I think you need to be a little more ruthless in these situations. Lorcan says you've skipped 3 times. I'm sorry. I'm not at home. So it could be the connection. I'm not sure. But if I'm recording this just as a file as well on my microphone, so when I re-upload it, the quality is better. Yeah, Benzema questions. Guys, if you're just tuning in, kind of already spoken about it. You can listen to it later. Someone is saying, I strongly disagree. He is constantly there and he is always performing like a 7 out of 10. I'm not sure who you're referring to. Octogenarian Grunt, do you think that Fran can become the starting left back over Mendy next season? I do. I think that, I've watched a lot of Rayo this season. I've wrote about it too, but I think the reason why I'm excited for Fran Garcia is that he does a lot of the right things. Like, he's an intelligent footballer. So a lot of the things that we have asked for Mendy to do over the last couple of years, and it was really noticeable this year because he wasn't as great defensively as he was the year prior. So in the past, like 2 years ago, with Mendy being a limited player offensively 2 years ago, you could kind of get away with seeing that because he was so great defensively that the trade-off was worth it. This year, because he's been injured and also when he's played, he hasn't been that good defensively. You really notice him as a weak point. With Fran Garcia, something that he does that we've been begging Mendy to do is just make runs offensively without the ball, to drag space away for Vinicius to have more space to work with. You watch Fran Garcia at Rayo, the way he connects with Alvaro Garcia, who is the guy who plays left wing ahead of him. They're constantly moving together with and without the ball. Fran Garcia is making underlaps, overlaps. He is sometimes going completely central, trying to receive cutbacks at the top of the box. So Ancelotti will have to channel that into his own system and give him certain instructions. But as a player profile, he makes a lot of good runs offensively. And also he's good one-on-one defensively. He works really hard behind the ball. He's a good presser. He's got the younger leg profile that we asked for, that would complement the Bellinghams, the Camavingas, the Chouameni's, the Valverdes, etc. I think he's a really good signing. I don't expect him, and I think fans should, just so that you don't get the sense that I'm overhyping him, because I think you have to keep your expectations with Fran Garcia in check. He's not elite. He's definitely one of the better left backs in Spain, but he can improve a little bit defensively. And he also, well, to be honest, I think he actually can improve from his Rayo days overall, because the talent upgrade around him is going to be pretty significant too. You go from Alvaro Garcia to Vinicius, and all of a sudden you're linking up with a completely different caliber of player. So I think we haven't even seen the best version of Fran Garcia yet either. So there's also that. So I don't know if he's going to be the starting full-time left back for the next 5-6 years, but I definitely think he's a really good squad player to have. So while I said that, there's like 20 new comments in the chat. So let's see where we'll go from here. The inevitable Miran Saric comment: when can we expect ER's return on a free, June or July? Krishna says, hi Kiyan, what is your take on integrating Castilla players like Arribas into the squad? You guys, come on. Like, how long have you guys been following me for? Krishna, how long have you been following me for? A day, a year, a decade? You know my thoughts on Arribas. You know it. You know how vocal I've been about Arribas, how good he is. You guys know the answer to this. Come on. Let's see. Hermit Crack says, would you like to see Bernardo Silva at Real Madrid? To be honest, of course. Ivan Garcia says, would you get Brahim Diaz back for next season? I'm not that excited about Brahim Diaz. I've watched a lot of him at Milan the last couple years. It's kind of underwhelming. Really underwhelming. He started off so brightly, was really great in that 10 role, which was interesting too, because he had played primarily as a winger up until that point in his young career, and Pioli put him in this 10 role and really gave him the keys. And I don't think he rewarded Pioli with that trust that he was given with his performances. Went missing far too often. I also think he just kind of coasted. Like, there were so many games you didn't even know he was on the field, and that's never a good sign. You really want to make sure your presence is known. And it was not a matter of lack of playing time. Like, with other players like Reinier Jesus, for example, who went on loan, or in the past, Borja Mayoral, it was a frustration and a complaint. Like, well, we don't know because he hasn't played. With Brahim, he's been given the keys. He's been playing regularly. In that sense, it was the most successful loan stint you could possibly ask for, starting every game over a long period for a good team in a good league. And I don't think he's been the same. Really, since he got COVID a couple years ago, and ever since he returned from COVID, he just wasn't the same. So, not to say that he can't improve, but if we're talking about the players they are right now, from Asensio to Brahim, it's a downgrade. So I'm not huge on Brahim. I'm not going to write it off completely because he may very well come back and he may improve. So I have to give him the benefit of the doubt if that happens. But if I'm kind of in charge and I'm the one giving the scouting reports to Flo and the board, I would just realistically tell them, like, it's not the greatest, most exciting, quote unquote, signing. Jake says, just a crumb of Davies info between us. Chat will keep it secret. Yeah. I don't think saying things on YouTube is considered keeping a secret. I will just say with Davies, and just when I say anything about Davies, just know this. It's truth. Okay? That's all I'll say. Just remember that I'm Canadian. Yeah, I would love to have Davies for obvious reasons. Obvious reason number one, he's one of the best left backs in the world. Obvious reason number two, he's Canadian. Real Madrid kicked the tires on him, and he's basically using that as leverage to stay at Bayern. I won't say 100% either way, but that's just kind of the reality with what's happening right now. Okay, where are we? Ashutosh says, "Hey Kiyan, we know you love Rodrigo, me too. But what do you think his long-term position is? How we can get the best out of him? His long-term position is going to be anywhere in the front three. I know everyone's saying that his best position is left wing. A moot point. He's not better than Vinicius, and Vinicius is going to start on that left wing. So he's going to have to play a lot of set in the middle and on the right, or in a 10 role, or the occasional left wing cameo when Vinicius can't play." Oh man, I was reading one that seemed interesting, and then the comments did that thing where they just jump. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, I come up with the system on the spot. Okay, I'm gonna read every single comment, regardless of what it is, for the next 13 minutes, and then wrap it up. Okay, that's the plan. Let's see where this goes, because I have too many pausing too much trying to find the good question. So here we go. Rapid fire, starting with I don't even know where I left off. I just had it. All right, we're going to start with Arash Raghabi and read every single one. Arash says, "If Tuchel leaves Bayern, would you sign him for a year, then Xabi Alonso?" No. Why do that just for 1 year? If I would just write out Carlo's contract. I really like Tuchel, by the way, but I don't necessarily trust his ability to get everybody to buy in and keep the locker room happy. And he's kind of like, in terms of character and personality, Ancelotti at least has. By the way, I'm a huge. I think Tuchel is an absolute genius, football genius, one of the geniuses of our time in football. But if it's just we're just banking 1 year, we might as well just write out Carlo, because we have a guarantee that he can keep squad harmony, and just ride it out until Xabi comes, if that's the plan. Ashutosh says, okay, that was the one I already read. Okay, so here we go. Anmol Hoon says, "What do you think our preferred starting midfield three will be next season?" I will just say what I think is the front three that I think is the most interesting, and it's Tchouameni, Camavinga, and Bellingham would be the one I'd be most interested in seeing, with Cruz and Fede spot starting. Ramtin Mahrour says number 10 belongs to Rodrigo and Bellingham. Is Brahim able to compete with them to start? No, Brahim is inferior to both of those players. And Ano Ellie says, "Rumor has it that we are looking to sign a second keeper. What do you know about this, and what could our options be?" I have no idea. The Agra says, "What happened to Renier Jesus? Just has not been playing. He played 0 minutes in like 2 years for Dortmund. I don't know why they renewed it for 1 more year. They should have just brought him back. And at Girona, he hasn't been playing much, and also has had some injuries." Guarav says, "What about Asensio?" I don't think there's anything new other than what we've already said about Asensio in previous podcasts. Raj Maheda says, "Do you think the board should convince Benzema to complete the contract and then leave, since Endrick will be available for us in 2024? I think the board is just basically giving him a choice and saying, we'd love you to stay, but if you go, we will respect it." Garvit says, "Hey, Kiyan, if Ceballos leaves, should we call up Nico Paz instead of maybe a loan? He trains with the first team with Cruz and Modric." Nico Paz is an exciting talent. I really like him. I don't think he's ready yet, but that doesn't mean he can't be incorporated and let him develop. My hunch is I don't think he'll be in the squad next season. We'll probably go out on loan. Or just have another year with Castilla. Stan says, "Just answer me here. Why is everyone so against Madrid buying quality in depth like we used to?" I'm saying this because every single time a top player is linked by fans to Madrid, most of you are against. I don't think anyone's against that. I think you're probably I don't know who those people are. Faiz Mohammed says, what do you think of Nagelsmann's fit at Real Madrid? One of the big concerns I have with him is his man management, but now that big guns like Benzema, Luka Modric, and Nacho aren't guaranteed to stay, the situation will be suited. I'm not worried about Nagelsmann's man management. I think he would work. I think he would be a really interesting coach to have. I think our squad profile also fits him. I also think he's been vindicated since being fired from Bayern. And I think it's been pretty clear that Bayern are the ones that got this wrong and made a mistake. And it wasn't him doing anything wrong necessarily. There must have been something political happening there. I also think even people like Benzema and Modric and Nacho would definitely not rebel against someone like Nagelsmann. I really don't see that happening. Sangit says, what are your preferences for striker and right-wing position? I do like the Kane option on a short-term deal, as I've mentioned, but I don't know if he'll accept that. And I think Firmino is an interesting option on a one-year deal until 2024 if you want to go guns blazing for one of Haaland and Mbappe plus Endrick. And the right wing, this is a loaded question, but because it's separated into realistic signings and signings that I want, like, Bernardo Silva came up earlier in the podcast, but he's not a realistic signing. And I really am not sure what the club is going to do for that position, to be quite honest with you. Abir says, I beg Papa Perez sign Kubo. We need a bit of surprise on the wing. It's too monochromatic with Vinicius as the only attacker. I think Kubo would be interesting. I don't know if he would be a good starting right winger, but I think he would be an interesting squad player as an Asensio replacement. Faison Loan says, Kiyan, shouldn't we get a striker which starts for a couple of years until Endrick becomes ready? Answered this. Harry Kane answered that. Mojalefa Motlung says, what's your take on Chukwueze at Real Madrid, and would he be a good signing, and would you start him at right wing over Rodrigo as he's a natural right winger? I think Chukwueze is a really interesting player. I think it's a player I rate highly. I don't think he is good enough to start for Real Madrid, but I think he is good enough to be a squad player. So I think it's an interesting option. Asensio leaving, replacement, discuss a death. Matin says, Kiyan, let me tell you that it makes me proud that a fellow countryman has made it so far in his profession that he gets to ask Pep Guardiola questions. Hey, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Abir says, who wouldn't want Davies in a heartbeat? Yep. Ramtin says, oh, no, the comment thing just did that thing where it jumps. I lost it. It's over. Oh, man. Where did it? It's all over, guys. It's finished. I was on such a roll. Hold on. All right, I got it. Back to where we were. Ramtin Makrou says using Brahim wouldn't make the same situation that him and Rodrigo prefer to play number 10 rather than right wing. I'm not sure. I think you might have gotten the wording a little bit mixed up, Ramtin. Jeff Sowa says, is the Mendy situation fair considering Carvajal has complete faith from the board, especially when you consider Carvajal had the BBC to pad his win-loss stats? I'm not sure what you mean, Jeff. Should Rafa Marin replace Nacho in case the latter leaves? Is he ready to make the leap as a first-team rotation option? I really like Rafa Marin. I really like his ball progression and his defensive reads. Both of those things he's really good at. Yeah, I think that would actually be really cool to see. Garvit Rao says, since we had the Toronto show before, will we ever do one in Vancouver? I'd love to come in Vancouver, in part because it's my favorite city in Canada, but our market's not. I don't know how our market is there, to be honest. I have to do a little bit of a survey and check the demographics in our analytics. I'd love to, but I don't see it happening much. Partly because right now we're only doing podcasts in cities we have to go to while we follow Real Madrid. So that's why we're doing LA, Dallas, and Houston this summer, because we have to follow Real Madrid for the preseason tour. Rahul Raj says, Benzema leaving could disrupt the squad planning. Okay. Anthony says, any updates on Ceballos? Just that he's been offered a contract, and we have to see what he does. Miran says, Kiyan, say 3 nice things about Rafa Benitez. It's a challenge. All right. Number one is that he got the best out of Gareth Bale. Number two is that he's a very nice man. And number three is he's a Madridista. Hey, man, that's the nicest thing you can be called. The code says, "Are you bothered that we still use Camavinga as a left back in La Liga after there was nothing to fight for? It feels like we'll force him a Nacho Fede route." Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage of the season, it's mostly all about experimenting more. So I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more experimenting, but I don't know. At this point, it's a moot point complaining about anything at this part of the season. To be honest, it's over. I'm mentally checked out, man. I'll be really honest with you. Like that last game against Sevilla, I basically took a mental health day. I did not want to do a podcast that night, and thanks to Ruben who did some post game thoughts on Sunday and published that. By the way, just as a side note, since I just brought that up, Ruben, if you guys were looking for the post game show for the Sevilla game, did I say Rayo or Sevilla before? I meant Sevilla either way. If you're looking for the Sevilla post game show, it did go up on our podcast feed. It didn't go up on YouTube. So if you go on Spotify and Apple, if you just search Managing Madrid, the entire podcast feed is there. Just subscribe to that because not everything goes on YouTube. So like most of the Las Blancas content that Yash and Canita do, the Castilla Corner content, a lot of that doesn't go on YouTube much. So if you want that content, that's subscribe on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts at. Naomi says, I already posted this, but maybe I missed it too. João Felix. No, I did not talk about him, but I'm about to talk with Jeremy Barron of Into the Calderon, athletic guy, about João Felix on Churros. I'll upload that on YouTube and on the Churros podcast feed. So if you're interested in that, we're going to talk about João Felix. Madrid Musketeer says, did Brahim's lack of presence, is that him being weak defensively or on the ball as well? No, actually, defensively, he works hard. He's a good presser and he tracks. A lot of Pioli system was he actually asked Brahim not to track back because he wanted him as an outlet, as the number 10 in transition when Milan win the ball. But he is capable defensively. You got to give him that. I got to go. So I'm just going to skim through to see what I should prioritize in these last 2 minutes or so. Anton says, do you smoke weed? No, I don't. It's just not good for you, man. I don't know what to say. If you smoke weed, you smoke weed, but there's so much science now about what it does to your brain. Not worth it. Although it probably sometimes maybe my performance right now is so bad that it looks like I'm smoking weed. Wolfgang Prince says, how good is your Spanish? Do you listen to any Spanish Real Madrid YouTubers? If so, which ones? I don't listen to any Spanish YouTube. I'm on a currently nearly 365-day streak on Duolingo. My Spanish is good enough to translate what Ancelotti says in the press conference or what Zidane says in the press conference, but it's not good enough to translate what Diego Simeone says in the press conference. So it really depends on who's speaking and how slow they're speaking. So I guess kind of, but from an understanding standpoint, if I'm sitting in a Carlo presser, I can basically transcribe everything he's saying. I think that's it. I think there's nothing else really that interesting. I mean, no, sorry, I should reword it. There's interesting stuff, but a lot of it is stuff we've already talked about. Sangit says, how do you generate income as a journalist? Well, I just have a job and my job pays me, and we have Patreon. So Patreon and plus a job and a travel budget. Miran says Miami Jimmy, clean sweep or a gentleman sweep in the finals. I don't even think. I think even Miami Jimmy is not enough to stop the Jokic train, the Jokic Murray train. And I don't want to face Jimmy Butler in anything, whether it's a game of basketball, a game of poker, and a game of football. I just wouldn't. But I think the Jokic Murray train is probably too strong. All right, guys. I appreciate it. That's it. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. And if you join late, I will upload this on YouTube and also on the podcast feed. I gotta run to do churros now with Jeremy. So if you're interested in Joao Felix, someone was asking about that, go do that. And if anyone listening to this is going to Dallas or Houston or LA or lives in any of those cities when we come this summer and you want to come to our podcast, because we're doing a live podcast in all those cities, please just keep it locked on the podcast when we announce the details, like the venue and the date and the time. We almost have it all locked up for LA, Dallas, and Houston, but we do have to sort out some logistics. Slugger Boy says, where can I watch churros? Literally on this YouTube channel, you can see it today. And you can also subscribe to it on Spotify, Apple, wherever. All right, guys. You guys rock. Thank you. Peace out.